I never thought I'd be sharing something like this on Reddit, but I am at my wit's end and need to get this off my chest. Even typing this feels surreal, like I am writing some twisted fiction instead of my actual life. I try to keep the details as accurate as possible while changing some names for obvious reasons. My wife Melissa and I have been married for 18 years. We have a daughter, Eliza, who just turned 19 last month. For the longest time, I believed we were a normal family despite our struggles. Sure, Melissa could be difficult, demanding, critical, quick to blame me for everything wrong in our lives, but I stayed for Eliza. I always told myself that's what a good father does. The truth is, I've been living a double life. One as David Parker, husband to Melissa and father to Eliza, and another as Michael Reed, a successful business consultant. I created this alternate identity years ago, initially just to have some breathing room from Melissa's constant criticism. It started innocently enough: a different email, a separate phone, eventually a small apartment across town where I could work in peace without her hovering and questioning my every move. I am not proud of the deception, but Melissa had made our home life unbearable. According to her, I was never successful enough, never attentive enough, never the husband she deserved. The separate identity gradually became my escape, my sanity. I'd tell her I was working late or traveling for business, and she never questioned it as long as the money kept flowing. 3 months ago, I was at a coffee shop as Michael when I noticed a young woman sitting alone, nervously checking her phone. Something about her seemed hauntingly familiar, though I couldn't place it. When our eyes met, she smiled and approached me. "Are you Michael?" she asked. I nodded, confused. I didn't recognize her, and certainly hadn't arranged to meet anyone. "I am Lily," she said, extending her hand. We matched on date night. I had never heard of date night, let alone created a profile there. But something made me play along. Maybe curiosity, maybe loneliness. I invited her to sit. Over the next hour, I learned that Lily was 19, studying psychology, and had a particular interest in meeting older, established men. She was articulate, intelligent, and there was something in her mannerisms that struck a chord with me. I found myself enjoying the conversation, though I made it clear I wasn't looking for anything romantic. We met again the following week, and the week after that. I became a sort of mentor to her, offering life advice, discussing books and philosophy. I never touched her, never even considered it. There was something about her that felt important. It wasn't until our 4th meeting that she mentioned her father. "He abandoned us when I was 6, she said, staring into her coffee. "Just disappeared one day. My mother told me he was a con man, a swindler who been living a double life. He had another family somewhere else." My blood ran cold. The coincidence was too specific, too close to home. My mother became bitter after that, she continued. She blamed him for everything. Made sure I knew what a monster he was. I asked for her mother's name, though I already knew the answer. "Elizabeth," she said, "but everyone calls her Melissa." The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. I excused myself to the bathroom, where I splashed cold water on my face and tried to breathe. This couldn't be happening. The math didn't add up. Eliza was at university across the country. This had to be some elaborate scheme, a setup. But when I returned to the table and really looked at Lily, at her eyes, her smile, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, I knew without a doubt. I was sitting across from my own daughter, who had no idea who I really was. And somehow, she found me. I need to clarify something from my previous post. While Melissa and I have been married for 18 years, Eliza is not our biological daughter who lives with us. Eliza is my daughter from a previous relationship, and she lives with her husband across town. Melissa and I don't have children together, though it's clear now that my past has caught up with me in ways I never imagined. After the shocking revelation at the coffee shop, I found myself making excuses to leave. I told Lily that I had an urgent call and would have to cut our meeting short. As I rushed out, I couldn't help but notice the disappointment in her eyes, eyes that I now recognized as unmistakably familiar. Once in my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what was happening. How had my daughter found me? What did she want? And most importantly, did she know who I really was? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake beside Melissa, who as usual had spent the evening criticizing my income, my ambition, my very existence. If you were half the man I thought I married, she snapped during dinner. We'd be living in a house twice this size by now. Her words barely registered. My mind was consumed with questions about Lily, or rather, Eliza. My Eliza, whom I hadn't seen since she was 6 years old. I had walked out on Elizabeth, who apparently now went by Melissa, and our daughter after years of emotional abuse. Elizabeth had been charming when we first met, but gradually revealed herself to be manipulative and cruel. When I finally left, she turned our daughter against me, telling her I was a swindler, a con man who had abandoned them without a second thought. The truth was more complicated. I had tried to maintain contact with Eliza, sent child support faithfully for years, but Elizabeth returned my letters and blocked my calls. Eventually, I created a new identity to start fresh, believing my daughter was better off without the confusion of a part-time father. Now, somehow, she had found me, and was systematically meeting with older men. Was she looking for father figures? Or was this some kind of revenge? The thought made me sick. I spent the next day in a daze. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't eat. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a message from Lily, Eliza. None came. That evening, I made an excuse to Melissa about a business dinner and drove to the small apartment I kept as Michael Reed. I needed space to think, to plan my next move. As I unlocked the door, I froze. Someone was inside. "Hello, Michael," said Eliza, sitting calmly on my sofa. "Or should I call you Dad?" My heart stopped. "How did you get in here?" I managed to ask. She twirled a set of keys. "The building manager is very understanding when you tell him you lost your key to your father's apartment. Especially when you have a matching last name on your ID. How long have you known?" I whispered. "Since our second meeting," she said, her voice steady. "I've been looking for you for years. When I finally tracked you down, I wanted to understand what kind of man abandons his family, creates a new identity, and starts over without a care for what he left behind." I noticed a wedding ring on her finger. My daughter was married. There was so much about her life I didn't know. "That's not what happened," I said, sitting down heavily across from her. "Your mother, she didn't tell you the truth. My mother told me you were a liar and a cheat," Eliza said coldly. "That you had multiple identities, that you conned people. Looking at this apartment, this whole second life you created, I am starting to think she wasn't entirely wrong." "Eliza," I began, "I never wanted to leave you." "Your mother." "Save it," she interrupted. "I am not here for excuses. I am here because I wanted to see for myself what kind of man you really are. The other men I've been meeting, they all your age, all in similar positions. I wanted to understand the type of person who could walk away from their child." "The other men?" I asked, my stomach churning. "You not special, Michael," she said, my false name like poison on her lips. "You just the one I was actually looking for." She stood up, straightening her coat. "My husband doesn't know I am doing this. He thinks I am at a study group. He's a good man. Everything you not." As she walked to the door, I found my voice again. "Please, Eliza, let me explain. There's so much you don't know." She paused, hand on the doorknob. "I am listening," she said, not turning around. I had one chance to tell my side of the story, to make her understand that I had never wanted to lose her. But could any explanation really justify the years of absence? "Your mother wasn't who you think she was," I began, knowing that what I was about to reveal would change everything. They spent the last hour trying to figure out how to continue this post. My hands are shaking as I type. Seeing Eliza, my daughter, standing in my apartment as Michael turned my world upside down. But I promised to share this story from the beginning. So here's what happened after she agreed to listen to my side. Your mother wasn't who you think she was, I began, motioning for her to sit back down. She remained standing, arms crossed defensively. When I met Elizabeth, she was charming, beautiful, and seemed like everything I ever wanted. We fell in love quickly, and when she got pregnant with you, I was overjoyed. We got married in a small ceremony before you were born. Eliza's expression remained guarded, but she finally sat down on the edge of the sofa. The problems started shortly after your birth. Your mother became different. She'd fly into rages over minor issues, then apologize profusely. She'd accuse me of looking at other women, of planning to leave her. She'd throw things, break dishes, and once, she locked me out of the house in the middle of winter for coming home 10 minutes late. My mother has a temper, Eliza conceded, but that hardly justifies. I am not justifying anything, I interrupted gently. I am just telling you what happened. For years, I tried to make it work. I loved you more than anything, and I believed a child needed both parents. But the emotional abuse got worse. She'd call me worthless, useless, a failure as a husband and father. All in front of you. I paused, the memories painful to revisit. When you were 5, I discovered she'd been systematically draining our bank accounts. She'd opened credit cards in my name, maxed them out, and hidden the bills. We were nearly bankrupt. When I confronted her, she threatened to take you away where I'd never find you. Eliza shifted uncomfortably. She always said you were the swindler. That's the thing about abusers, I said quietly. They often accuse others of what they themselves are doing. I started documenting everything, planning to file for divorce and custody. But before I could, she emptied what remained of our accounts and disappeared with you overnight. That's not how she tells it, Eliza said, but her voice had lost some of its certainty. I hired a private investigator, but she changed your names. Elizabeth became Melissa. I sent child support to her sister's address for years until that too disappeared. Every attempt to contact you was blocked. I reached for my laptop. I can show you the police reports, the bank statements, the custody filings. They kept everything. As Eliza looked through the documents, her composed facade began to crack. I could see the confusion in her eyes as years of her mother's narratives collided with the evidence before her. If what you're saying is true, she finally said, why create this whole other identity? Why be Michael Reed instead of just finding us directly? After 5 years of searching and legal dead ends, I was broken, I admitted. My reputation was ruined by the debt she accumulated in my name. Employers would Google me and find the bankruptcy filings. I couldn't even rent an apartment. Creating a new identity seemed like the only way to rebuild some semblance of a life. I took a deep breath. I never stopped looking for you, Eliza. But I had to survive too. She was silent for a long time, staring at the floor. I need to process this, she finally said. My whole life, she told me you were the villain. She'd get drunk and tell me how you had multiple identities, multiple families. How you conned her and abandoned us. She was describing herself, I said softly. She was the one with secrets. Eliza stood up abruptly. I need time. And verification. These could be forged, for all I know. Take them, I said. Show them to a lawyer if you want. I have nothing to hide anymore. As she gathered the documents, a phone call interrupted us. The screen showed Jake, presumably her husband. She answered, turning away from me. Hey, yes, study group ran late. I'll be home soon. Her voice was strained with the effort of sounding normal. After she hung up, she turned back to me. I should go. My husband will be worried. Does he know about any of this? Your search for me The meetings with other men? She shook her head. Jake thinks they've been attending psychology study groups. He's a good man who loves me. I didn't want to burden him with my issues. Eliza, I said carefully, I understand why they've been meeting these men. Looking for answers, trying to understand. But it's dangerous, and it's not fair to your husband to keep secrets like this. Her eyes flashed with sudden anger. You don't get to lecture me about secrets or what's fair in a marriage. They've been living a double life for years, hiding from your current wife. Right, I conceded. We both have secrets, but perhaps we can start being honest now, with ourselves and the people we love. She gathered her things and moved toward the door. I'll look through these, she said, indicating the folder of documents. But I am not promising anything. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling both emptied and somehow lighter. My daughter knew the truth now, or at least part of it. But I still had another truth to face. I needed to tell Melissa about my double life as Michael Reed. And about Eliza. What I didn't realize was how quickly everything would unravel once those secrets began to surface. Everything happened so quickly after Eliza left my apartment that night. I didn't hear from her for 3 days, which gave me time to think about what I needed to do. I decided that regardless of whether Eliza believed me or wanted a relationship, I needed to come clean to Melissa. Living this double life had corroded my soul for too long. I planned to tell Melissa over dinner that Friday. I even made reservations at an upscale restaurant, thinking a public setting might keep her reaction somewhat contained. But Thursday night, as I was returning from work as David Parker, I found Melissa waiting for me in the living room, her face a mask of cold fury. Who is Michael Reed? She demanded without preamble. My blood ran cold. How do you? Your daughter called me today, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Imagine my surprise when a young woman they never met tells me my husband has been living a double life for years. I sank into the chair across from her, my carefully rehearsed speech evaporating. Melissa, I can explain. Oh, I am sure you can, she cut in. They always been so good with explanations, haven't you, David? Or should I call you Michael now? Her calm was more terrifying than any rage. She stood up and paced the room with measured steps. Eliza told me everything. How you created this alternate identity to escape me. How they've been maintaining a separate apartment. How they've been meeting with her behind my back. That's not exactly. She also had some interesting documents, Melissa continued as if I hadn't spoken. Bank statements, police reports, custody filings, all painting quite a different picture of our relationship than the one they've been living. She stopped pacing and stared at me with eyes like shards of ice. She says I am not even Melissa. That I am Elizabeth, her mother. That I took her away from you and changed our names. The silence between us was deafening. For the first time in our marriage, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. Is it true? She finally whispered. Am I Elizabeth? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? You know who you are. Do I? Her voice had lost its edge, replaced by something more vulnerable. Because according to your daughter, I am not just a bitch of a wife. I am a thief, a liar, an identity fraudster who stole a child away from her father. She sank back onto the sofa, suddenly looking smaller. And the worst part is, parts of it sound familiar, like a dream I can quite remember. I approached cautiously and sat beside her. Melissa, what are you saying? She pressed her fingertips to her temples. They've been having these episodes, blackouts, for years. Sometimes I find things I don't remember buying, paperwork I don't remember filling out. My therapist says it's stress, but a chill ran through me. You seeing a therapist? For 3 years now, she admitted. For the mood swings, the anger, the gaps in my memory. The implications were staggering. Had I been living with a woman who didn't even remember her own past? Who might not even be aware of who she really was? Melissa, or Elizabeth? I don't know what to say. I created Michael Reed to escape the emotional abuse, yes. But I never imagined that I might not be fully aware of what I was doing, she finished. That makes me what? Mentally ill? A convenient excuse for your betrayal? Her vulnerability vanished, replaced again by cold anger. Get out. I need time to process this. And to speak with my therapist. I packed a bag while she watched silently from the doorway. As I headed for the door, she asked one final question. Did you ever love me? Either version of me? I paused, the truth surprisingly easy to find. I loved Elizabeth once, before she changed. And sometimes, in quiet moments when you weren't tearing me down, I caught glimpses of her in you. Those moments, I loved. I spent that night at my Michael Reed apartment, staring at the ceiling, wondering if my entire marriage had been built on quicksand. Had I been punishing a woman who wasn't even fully aware of her actions? Or was this just another manipulation tactic? The next morning, my phone rang. It was Eliza. We need to talk, she said without greeting. I spoke with your wife yesterday. I know, she told me. No, Eliza's voice was tight with tension. I mean, I spoke with her again this morning. She called me, but... She paused. Dad, she didn't remember our conversation from yesterday. She introduced herself as Elizabeth, not Melissa. And she was different, softer, confused. My grip tightened on the phone. Where are you now? At home. Jake's at work. Stay there, I said. I am coming over. I think there's a lot more to this story than either of us understood. As I drove to my daughter's address, my mind raced with possibilities. Dissociative identity disorder. Some other mental illness? Or was this all an elaborate ruse? I was about to find out, because when I pulled up to Eliza's apartment building, I saw Melissa, or Elizabeth, getting out of a taxi at the same address. Our three lives were about to collide in ways none of us could have predicted. This will be my final update on this surreal chapter of my life. I spent the last week trying to process everything that happened at Eliza's apartment that day, and I am still not sure I have the words to adequately describe it, but I'll try. When I arrived at Eliza's building, Melissa, or Elizabeth, was already at the entrance, her finger hovering over the buzzer. She turned when she heard my footsteps, and I was struck by her expression. It wasn't the hard-edged contempt I'd grown accustomed to seeing on my wife's face, but something softer, more uncertain. David, she said, her voice higher, less commanding than usual. What are you doing here? Before I could answer, the door opened, and Eliza stood there, looking between us with a mixture of fear and determination. You both should come in, she said quietly. Jake's at work. We can talk freely. We followed her up to a modest but tastefully decorated apartment. As we sat awkwardly in her living room, I noticed a wall of photos. Eliza in a graduation cap and gown. Eliza and a tall, kind-looking man on their wedding day. The two of them on various vacations. A normal, happy life that had existed parallel to mine for years without my knowledge. I've been doing some research, Eliza began, placing a folder on the coffee table. And I've spoken with Mom, South therapist, Dr. Winters. You had no right, Elizabeth began, but her indignation lacked its usual force. I had every right, Eliza countered. You've been lying to me my entire life, or at least, part of you has. She opened the folder and spread out several documents. Dr. Winters confirmed what I suspected after our conversations. Mom has dissociative identity disorder, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. The room seemed to tilt around me. That's why she sometimes can't remember conversations. Why she seems like two different people. Eliza nodded. According to Dr. Winters, the Elizabeth personality was the original. She suffered severe trauma in childhood that she never properly addressed. When the stress of motherhood and marriage became too much, a protective alternate personality emerged, Melissa. Melissa was created to be stronger, more ruthless, Eliza continued. She took control during times of stress or perceived threat. Eventually, she became the dominant personality. I looked at my wife, who sat with her hands tightly clasped in her lap, tears streaming silently down her face. "Is this true?" I asked gently. She nodded almost imperceptibly. I've been aware of the blackouts for years, but Dr. Winters only recently suggested did. I didn't want to believe it. Her voice was different, softer, less clipped. This was Elizabeth speaking. I realized with a shock. The Melissa part of me. She's been protecting me. At least, that's what she believes. But she's also been destroying my life. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Our life. Eliza reached over and took her mother's hand. It was such a tender gesture that I felt my throat tighten. When I found Dad and confronted him, when I showed you those documents yesterday, it triggered a switch. Elizabeth resurfaced more fully than she has in years, according to Dr. Winters. So all this time, I said slowly, when I thought I was living with a woman who hated me, who was deliberately cruel. You were living with a protective alter who believed she was keeping Elizabeth safe, Eliza finished. Melissa saw vulnerability as dangerous. She pushed people away before they could hurt Elizabeth again. I created Michael Reed to escape Melissa, I said. But all along, I should have been trying to reach Elizabeth. My wife, Elizabeth, looked at me with a mixture of sorrow and tentative hope. I remember loving you, David. Those memories belong to me, not her. But I also remember feeling like I was watching my life from behind glass, unable to stop Melissa from driving you away. The three of us talked for hours. Elizabeth explained that after I confronted her about the drained bank accounts, something Melissa had done without her knowledge or control, Melissa took over completely, fearing I would leave. She took Eliza and ran, changing their names and constructing a narrative that painted me as the villain. I've been fighting to regain control for years, Elizabeth said. The therapy has been helping, but Melissa is strong. She believed she was protecting us both. Eliza shared her side too. How she'd grown suspicious of her mother's contradictory stories. How she started researching her past and eventually found traces of her father online. How she'd been meeting with older men similar to me, trying to understand the type of man who could abandon his family, only to discover I never had. As the afternoon light faded into evening, we reached an understanding. Elizabeth would continue intensive therapy for her dead, with both Eliza and me supporting her recovery. Our marriage, however, was over. Too much damage had been done, too many years lost. We would divorce, but as allies rather than enemies. I want to get to know Elizabeth, I told her. The real you, but I can't be your husband anymore. She nodded, a sad smile on her face. I understand. I need to focus on becoming whole again. On integrating Melissa rather than being controlled by her. As for Eliza and me, we've begun the delicate process of building a father-daughter relationship. It's awkward and often painful, but also filled with moments of unexpected joy. Last weekend, I met Jake, who turned out to be every bit the good man Eliza had described. He's been remarkably understanding about the whole situation, though I suspect it will take time for him to fully trust me. That night, as I was leaving Eliza's apartment, my daughter hugged me for the first time in over a decade. I spent so many years hating a version of you that never existed, she whispered. I am glad I found the real one. Elizabeth has moved in with her sister temporarily while she continues treatment. The divorce proceedings are amicable, with both of us focusing on healing rather than blame. Sometimes when we meet to discuss logistics, I catch glimpses of Melissa trying to resurface. A hardening around the eyes, a sharpness in tone. But Elizabeth is stronger now, more able to maintain control. As for Michael Reed, he no longer exists. They consolidated my life back into one identity. David Parker, father to Eliza, ex-husband to Elizabeth, and, for the first time in many years, a man without secrets. The betrayals that defined our family weren't what any of us thought they were. Elizabeth didn't betray me, her illness did. I didn't betray Elizabeth by creating Michael. I was surviving the only way I knew how. And Eliza wasn't betraying Jake by seeking out older men. She was searching for the truth about herself. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't staying, but letting go. Elizabeth and I have freed each other from a marriage that had become a prison for us both. Now we can focus on healing separately, while working together to be the parents Eliza deserved all along. I am not sure what the future holds, but for the first time in decades, I am facing it as my complete, authentic self. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory of all. Thank you for watching this fascinating story of betrayal, search and forgiveness. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new dramatic stories on our channel.